Lee Minji sat at her desk aboard the human research vessel Harmony's Edge, staring at reports that made her eyes hurt. Trade agreements with the Centauri colonies, mining rights disputes near Jupiter, diplomatic complaints from 3 different human settlements about shipping delays. She rubbed her temples and wondered why she ever thought becoming a diplomatic liaison would be exciting. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago. Outside her small window, the stars looked the same as they always did, distant and quiet and boring. Minji had been a military strategist once. She knew how to plan battles and outsmart enemies. Now she spent her days reading about grain shipments and tax disputes. Her computer made a soft beeping sound. Another report, probably. Maybe someone was complaining about the quality of synthetic meat on Mars Station 7. She almost ignored it, but the beeping got louder and more urgent. The screen flashed red. Emergency transmission. Priority 1. Minji sat up straight. Priority 1 messages were for wars and disasters and alien invasions, not for trade disputes. She accepted the transmission, and her screen filled with an image that made her heart stop. 3 alien faces looked back at her. She had seen pictures of them in her diplomatic training, but never expected to see them in real life. The first face belonged to Veltheri of the Keth Empire. His reptilian features were sharp, and his yellow eyes looked like they could cut through steel. The Keth were warriors who had conquered half their galaxy before humans ever left Earth. They respected only strength and had little patience for weakness. The second face was harder to look at. Noxandra of the Hive Collective had compound eyes like an insect and mandibles that clicked when she spoke. The Hive thought as one mind across billions of bodies. They saw individual thoughts as a disease that needed to be cured. The third being was the strangest. Kermalik of the Resonance had no solid form. He appeared as shifting patterns of light and energy that hurt to stare at directly. His people were ancient and powerful, and spoke in riddles that could drive lesser minds to madness. These 3 species had never worked together before. They had been enemies for thousands of years. Seeing them on the same transmission made Minji's hands shake. Veltheri spoke first. His voice was like grinding metal. Human Representative Lee Minji, we address you on behalf of the Tri-Alliance. Your species has become a problem. Noxandra's mandibles clicked rapidly. Humans spread chaos wherever they go. You think as individuals instead of working for the greater good. This cannot continue. Kermalik's voice echoed like wind through empty spaces. Your kind brings disorder to the perfect patterns of existence. Change without purpose. Growth without direction. Minji found her voice. I don't understand. Humans have never attacked any of your species. We've kept to our own space. We follow all the peace treaties. Veltheri's laugh was like breaking glass. You think we fear your weapons, your small ships and weak armies. We do not. We fear what you represent, Noxandra added. Unpredictability. Chaos thinking. Ideas that spread like infection. You solve problems in ways that should not work, Kermalik whispered. You find answers where no answers should exist. This troubles the order of things. Minji's mouth went dry. What do you want? Surrender, Veltheri said simply. Earth will submit to Tri-Alliance rule. Your people will be integrated into our systems. Your chaotic thinking will be controlled and directed toward useful purposes. And if we refuse, then your species will be eliminated, Noxandra clicked. For the good of galactic stability. Minji felt sick. This was not a negotiation. This was a death sentence with only one alternative. But then Kermalik spoke again. However, we are not unreasonable beings. We offer one chance. One human will undergo the final assessment. 3 trials to prove your species has value beyond chaos. If this human succeeds, your people will be allowed to exist as junior partners in our alliance. If they fail, Veltheri added with a smile that showed too many teeth, Earth burns. The transmission ended. Minji stared at the blank screen in shock. She was just a diplomatic liaison. She reviewed trade reports and settled minor disputes. She was not qualified to save humanity. but somehow she knew they had already chosen her. 3 days later, Minji stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at something that should not exist. The Nexus hung in space like a metal moon. It was bigger than any space station humans had ever built, bigger than most asteroids. The surface was covered in towers and domes that glowed with alien lights. Park Dongwoo stood beside her, checking his equipment for the 10th time. He was the best engineer Minji knew, and the only person she trusted to watch her back in this nightmare. His dark eyes were calm, but she could see the worry lines around them. "Readings are off the charts," he said quietly. "Power sources I cannot identify. Metal alloys that should not be possible. This place is beyond our technology by centuries." Kim Yuna looked up from her communication station. She was young but brilliant at reading between the lines of what people said. "I am picking up massive data streams between the alien ships. They are talking, but not to us. Planning something, maybe." The last member of their small team was Choi Jin-hyuk. He was both a medic and a scientist who studied alien life forms. Right now, he was scanning the Nexus with every sensor they had. "Biological readings are strange," he reported. "I detect thousands of life forms, but many signatures are incomplete. Like pieces are missing." Minji felt cold despite the warm bridge air. Missing how? Brain patterns mostly. Neural activity is there but reduced. Like they are sleeping or drugged or worse. Before Minji could ask more questions, her screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The 3 alien leaders appeared again. This time they were not on separate screens. They sat together in what looked like a giant council chamber. "Human representative," Veltheri said. "You will dock at Bay 7. Come alone." "My team comes with me," Minji replied firmly. Noxandra's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "The assessment is for one human only. Others are not required." "Then there is no assessment," Minji said. "We work together, or not at all." The 3 aliens looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Finally, Malik spoke in his echoing voice. "Very well. Your companions may observe, but only you will face the trials." The docking procedure was smooth despite the alien technology. Park Dongwoo muttered about engineering principles that made no sense, while Kim Yuna tried to establish contact protocols with station systems. Choi Jin-hyuk kept scanning for biological threats and finding readings that worried him. The airlock opened onto a corridor that stretched further than Minji could see. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that pulsed with soft light. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something organic and unpleasant. Their escort was a floating robot that looked like a metal sphere covered in sensors. It led them through passages that seemed to shift and change when Minji was not looking directly at them. Park Dongwoo was taking readings with a handheld device and frowning at the results. "Gravitational fields are impossible," he whispered. "We should be walking on walls or ceilings in some of these areas, but somehow we stay upright." They entered a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. In the center were 4 chairs arranged around a circular table. 3 were occupied by the alien leaders. The 4th was clearly meant for Minji. She sat down and immediately felt strange. The chair seemed to conform to her body shape, and she could feel something scanning her. Reading her thoughts, maybe. She tried to keep her mind blank. "Welcome to the Nexus," Veltheri said. "This station has hosted the final assessment for over 2,000 years. Many species have sat in that chair. Most have failed." "What happened to the ones who failed?" Minji asked. Noxandra's compound eyes reflected the crystal light. "They found new purpose serving the Tri-Alliance. Their unique abilities were preserved and put to better use than random chaos." Choi Jin-hyuk made a small sound behind her. His medical scanners must be picking up something he did not like. Malik's energy form pulsed brighter. 3 trials await you, human. The trial of logic will test your reasoning ability. The trial of emotion will measure your mental stability. The trial of combat will evaluate your tactical thinking. And if I pass all 3, the blinding light faded, and Minji found herself standing in a room that had no walls. The floor beneath her feet was solid, but everything else was empty space, filled with floating shapes and symbols. Numbers and equations drifted past her like falling snow. Geometric patterns spun slowly in the air, casting colored shadows. Behind her, she could hear Park Dong-woo calling her name, but his voice sounded far away. She turned but saw only darkness. The trial had separated her from her team. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere. It sounded like all three alien leaders talking at once. The trial of logic begins. You will solve the problems presented. Speed and accuracy will be measured. Failure results in immediate termination of the assessment. The first puzzle appeared directly in front of her. It was a cube made of light with numbers on each face. The numbers kept changing in patterns she had to figure out. Most people would start by writing down the sequences and looking for mathematical relationships. Minji just stared at it for a moment and said 17. The cube disappeared. A new puzzle took its place. This one was more complex. Multiple shapes rotating around each other with symbols that meant nothing to her. Again, she watched for a few seconds, then pointed to one of the symbols. That one is different because it moves against the pattern instead of with it. The puzzle vanished. The next one was even harder. A three-dimensional maze filled with moving walls and changing paths. Finding the exit would normally take careful mapping and logical step-by-step movement. Minji closed her eyes and walked forward without looking. She turned left, then left again, following some instinct she could not explain. When she opened her eyes, she was standing at the exit. From the darkness around her came sounds of confusion. Alien voices whispering to each other in languages she did not understand. They sounded upset. How did she solve the Kepler sequence without calculations? One voice asked. The rotating symbol matrix requires systematic analysis. She just guessed. Another replied. No being has ever completed the dimensional maze without mapping the walls first. More puzzles appeared. Each one was designed to test different types of logical thinking. Pattern recognition, mathematical reasoning, spatial awareness, problem solving. They came faster and faster. Minji solved them all the same way. She would look at each puzzle for a moment, then give an answer that felt right. She did not use formulas or write down notes or make careful logical steps. She just knew. A puzzle about prime numbers. She gave the answer before fully reading the question. A riddle about quantum mechanics. She solved it by thinking about how water moves around rocks in a stream. A complex chess problem with pieces that moved in impossible ways. She won in 3 moves by ignoring the rules and playing like the pieces were people with their own motivations. Each solution made the alien voices more agitated. They kept asking how she was doing things that should be impossible. How could someone solve logic puzzles without using logic? The final puzzle was the hardest. It filled the entire space around her with mathematical equations that stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of variables and relationships that would take a computer hours to process. The kind of problem that advanced alien civilizations used to test their greatest minds. Minji looked at it and laughed. This is not really about math, she said out loud. It is about fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of taking risks. Fear of trying something new. She reached out and changed one symbol in the center of the display. A single small change that rippled outward through the entire equation. Within seconds, the whole thing collapsed into a simple answer. The solution was always there, she explained to the darkness. You just had to be willing to break the rules to see it. Silence fell over the chamber. Then Veltheri's voice spoke alone. Impossible. The eternal equation has no solution. It has been tested for millennia. It has no solution if you follow the rules, Minji replied. But who says you have to follow rules that do not make sense? The floating numbers and shapes began to fade. The walls of the chamber reappeared. Minji could see her team again standing behind a barrier of energy. Park Dong-woo was staring at readings on his device with his mouth open. Kim Yuna looked amazed. Choi Jin-hyuk was scanning her with his medical equipment. The 3 alien leaders sat at their table looking disturbed. They whispered to each other in urgent tones. Finally, Noxandra spoke. The trial of logic is complete. The human has achieved acceptable results through unacceptable methods. How long did it take? Minji asked. Germalic's energy patterns flickered wildly. 47 minutes. The previous record was 6 days. Minji felt a chill. Previous record. You mean other species have taken the same test? Many species, Veltheri confirmed. All have eventually found the correct answers through proper logical analysis. What happened to them after they passed? The aliens exchanged looks but did not answer. Instead, Noxandra announced, prepare for the trial of emotion. Rest period is 15 minutes. As the chamber dimmed, Minji walked back to her team. Park Dongwoo grabbed her arm. Your brain activity was completely abnormal during that test, he whispered urgently. You were not thinking the way humans usually think. Something is very wrong here. 15 minutes passed too quickly. Minji barely had time to drink some water and check on her team before the chamber changed again. This time, the walls became mirrors that reflected not her image but her memories. Scenes from her childhood, her military training, the day she left Earth for her first diplomatic mission. The trial of emotion begins, the combined alien voices announced. Emotional stability will be tested. Mental breakdown will result in immediate failure. The mirrors began showing different images. Horrible images. Earth burning in nuclear fire. Cities turned to ash and glass. Oceans boiling away under alien weapons. Billions of people dying in agony while screaming for help that would never come. Minji forced herself to keep breathing. She knew these were not real. They were projections meant to make her panic, but they looked so real she could almost feel the heat from the flames. The images changed. Now she saw her team being tortured. Park Dongwoo strapped to a table while alien machines cut into his brain. Kim Yuna screaming as insects burrowed under her skin. Choi Jin-hyuk begging for mercy while energy beings burned away his memories piece by piece. Her hands started shaking. These people were her responsibility. She had brought them here. If something happened to them, it would be her fault. Feel the fear, human, Veltheri's voice whispered in her ear. This is what failure means. This is what happens when you cannot control your emotions. New images appeared, her own torture now. Alien hands holding her down while machines invaded her mind. Her thoughts being pulled apart and examined. Her memories being stolen and stored like books on a shelf. Her personality being erased until nothing remained but an empty shell. Most species would break at this point. They would either shut down emotionally to protect themselves or go insane from the horror. The aliens expected one of these reactions. They were used to species that cracked under pressure. Minji did something else. She got angry. You think this scares me, she said to the mirrors. You think showing me nightmares will make me weak. The images kept changing. More death, more torture, more ways her people could suffer. But instead of breaking down, Minji felt her anger growing stronger. These aliens were threatening everything she cared about. They were trying to break her spirit before stealing her mind. I have seen real war, she continued. I have watched real people die. I have made decisions that got good soldiers killed. Your fake pictures do not compare to real guilt. The mirrors began showing her worst real memories now. Battles she had planned that went wrong. Friends who died because of her mistakes. The weight of command and the price of failure. But these memories did not weaken her. They reminded her why she fought. Why she never gave up. Why she kept trying even when the odds were impossible. Every person I failed to save taught me something, she said. Every mistake made me stronger. Every loss made me more determined to protect the people who were left. The alien voices sounded confused. She is not following the pattern. Fear should lead to breakdown or shutdown, not increased aggression. Her emotional responses are chaotic, unpredictable. This is exactly why humans are dangerous. The mirrors changed tactics. Instead of showing her fears, they began showing her temptations. Power over the galaxy. Advanced technology. The ability to make humanity the dominant species instead of a junior partner. You could rule with us, Noxandra's voice offered. Your people could be conquerors instead of victims. All you have to do is accept our guidance. Minji smiled grimly. Get used to it. We are just getting started. Images of human fleets crushing alien worlds filled the mirrors. Earth as the center of a vast empire with other species serving as slaves. Minji herself sitting on a throne of crystal and metal, while lesser beings bowed before her. This was harder to resist than the fear. The temptation of power over those who threatened her people. The chance to make sure humanity would never be victims again. But Minji had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat. She understood the difference between strength and cruelty, between protection and domination. I do not want to rule anyone, she said. I want my people to be free. All people to be free. Fear and slavery are not solutions to conflict. The mirrors began showing something unexpected. Memories that were not hers. Alien thoughts and experiences bleeding through the psychic connection. She saw the Keth Empire's history of conquest. The Hive Collective's absorption of individual minds. The Resonance's manipulation of energy and matter. But she also saw their fears. The Keth were terrified of change because their rigid military structure could not adapt. The Hive feared individual thought because it threatened their collective unity. The Resonance was afraid of chaos because their perfect patterns might unravel. You are the ones who are scared, Minji realized. You built these trials not to test other species but to steal from them. You take what makes each species unique and add it to your own power. The mirrors cracked. The psychological pressure that had been building suddenly reversed. Instead of the aliens reading her emotions, she was reading theirs. Their fear of human unpredictability. Their need for human creativity. Their desperate hunger for something they could never create themselves. Impossible. Germalic's voice echoed with panic. The trial of emotion does not work in reverse. Subjects cannot access the neural patterns of their judges. Maybe your other subjects could not, Minji replied. But humans do not follow your rules. The mirrors shattered completely. The chamber returned to normal. Minji stood in the center breathing hard but unbroken. Her team looked relieved to see her alive and sane. The three alien leaders sat at their table in shocked silence. Finally, Veltheri spoke. The trial of emotion is complete. Results are inconclusive. What does that mean? Minji asked. It means you have done something that should not be possible, Noxandra admitted reluctantly. During the break between trials, Minji walked back to where her team waited behind the energy barrier. They huddled together, speaking in whispers while the alien leaders argued among themselves in harsh clicking and hissing sounds. Park Dongwoo pulled out his scanner and pretended to check the air quality. Instead, he showed Minji readings that made her blood run cold. I have been analyzing the station's power systems, he whispered. The energy patterns are wrong. Most of the power is not going to life support or artificial gravity. Where is it going? Minji asked quietly. Deep inside the station. Massive machinery that I cannot identify. But the energy signature matches medical equipment. Surgery equipment. Brain surgery. Kim Yuna moved closer while monitoring her communication device. I finally broke through some of their data streams. Found fragments of records. Ships arriving with diplomatic missions like ours. But no records of anyone ever leaving. Choi Jin-hyuk had been running biological scans the entire time. His face was pale, and his hand shook as he showed them his readings. Remember when I detected thousands of life forms with incomplete brain patterns? I know what that means now. Surgical removal of specific neural structures. The parts that handle creativity and independent thought. Minji felt sick. You mean they cut out pieces of people's brains? Not cut out. Copied. The original brain patterns are still there but reduced. Like turning down the volume on everything that makes someone unique. What is left behind would be functional but docile. Perfect servants who retain their skills but lose their ability to rebel. Park Dongwoo's scanner beeped softly. There is more. I am detecting some kind of storage system. Massive data banks filled with neural patterns, thousands of them, maybe millions. They are collecting minds, Kim Yuna realized, taking the best parts of every species that comes here and storing them like books in a library. The pieces fell into place for Minji. This is not really an assessment, it is a harvest. They bring species here one by one and steal what makes them special. Then they add those abilities to their own, while leaving behind empty shells to serve them. Choi Jin-hyuk nodded grimly. The incomplete life forms I detected. Those are probably representatives from other species who came here for their own final assessments. Now they are prisoners with just enough mind left to follow orders. But why the elaborate tests? Minji asked. Why not just capture us and be done with it? Park Dong-woo had been thinking about this, because they need to understand how each species thinks before they can copy it. The trials are not tests of worthiness. They are detailed scans of cognitive processes. Every time you solve a puzzle or face a challenge, they are mapping how your brain works. Kim Yuna checked her readings again. The data streams increased dramatically during each trial. They are not just watching you perform. They are recording everything. Every thought. Every decision. Every creative leap. And when they have enough data, Choi Jin-hyuk added, they will extract what they want and leave behind a compliant version of you to serve their empire. Minji looked across the chamber at the three alien leaders. They had stopped arguing and were watching her team with obvious suspicion. Velferi's reptilian eyes were cold and calculating. Noxandra's compound eyes reflected no emotion at all. Germalic's energy form pulsed with impatient light. How long do we have? She asked. The final trial should complete their scans, Park Dong-woo replied. After that, they will not need to keep up the pretense anymore. Can we escape? Kim Yuna shook her head. I tried to send a distress signal, but something is blocking all communications. We are completely cut off. The docking bay where we left our ship is sealed, Park Dong-woo added. Multiple layers of alien security. Even if we could reach it, the ship would not be able to break free of the station's tractor beams. Choi Jin-hyuk was still scanning the walls around them. There is something else. I am detecting recent surgical activity in several areas of the station. Operations that happened within the last few days. Other species may have been here recently. Other species going through the same process we are, Minji said. How many civilizations have they harvested? Based on the neural storage capacity I am reading, Park Dong-woo calculated quietly, hundreds, maybe thousands. This has been going on for a very long time. The energy barrier around them suddenly flared brighter. The alien leaders had finished their discussion and were looking in their direction. Velferi stood up from the council table. The final trial will begin shortly, he announced. Prepare yourself, human. This will determine not only your fate, but the fate of your entire species. As the aliens turned away to make preparations, Minji gathered her team closer. They think they have us trapped, she whispered. They think we will follow their script until the end. But they have made one mistake. What mistake? Kim Yuna asked. They underestimated what humans do when we are cornered and angry, and have nothing left to lose. Park Dong-woo managed a weak smile. What are you planning? I am not going to take their final trial, Minji said. I am going to give them a test of my own, one they are not prepared for. The chamber began changing around them. Weapons materialized from the walls. Combat scenarios loaded into the air. The trial of combat was beginning. But Minji had no intention of playing by their rules anymore. The chamber transformed into a battlefield. Holographic enemies appeared from all sides. Alien soldiers with energy weapons, robotic drones firing laser beams, flying creatures with razor-sharp claws. The trial of combat had begun, but Minji ignored all of it. Instead, she turned to face the three alien leaders sitting at their council table. I refuse to participate in your trial, she announced loudly. The holographic enemies froze in place. Velferi's eyes narrowed dangerously. You will complete the assessment, human. Refusal means immediate termination. Good, Minji replied. Because I am terminating this charade right now. She pointed at the massive screens around the chamber that showed neural storage data. We know what this really is. You are not testing us. You are stealing from us. This whole station is a brain harvesting operation. Noxandra's mandibles clicked rapidly. Impossible. You could not have accessed that information. My engineer analyzed your power systems. My communications officer broke through your data streams. My medic identified your surgical equipment. Did you really think we would just walk blindly into your trap? Gurmalik's energy form pulsed with angry light. It does not matter what you know. You cannot escape. No species has ever left this station unchanged. Because no species has ever been human, Minji shot back. The holographic battlefield began to fade. The real defenses of the station activated instead. Energy barriers slammed down around the chamber. Weapon ports opened in the walls. Security drones poured through hidden doors. Secure the humans, Veltheri commanded. Begin emergency extraction procedures. Take what data we have collected so far. The energy barrier around Minji's team flickered and died. Park Dongwoo immediately pulled out a device he had been building during the trials. It looked like a combination of human technology and salvaged alien components. Remember when I said their engineering principles made no sense? He called out while working frantically. I figured out why. Their systems have massive security flaws because they assume everyone thinks like they do. A pulse of energy shot out from his device. Half the lights in the chamber went out. Several of the security drones crashed into the walls. Kim Yuna had her communication equipment ready. I have been mapping their network this whole time. If I can reach the right systems, I might be able to cause some real damage. She plugged into an access port on the wall. Immediately, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Her fingers flew over her controls as she dove deep into alien computer systems. I found the neural storage banks, she reported. Thousands of stored consciousness patterns from different species. They have been doing this for centuries. Choi Jin-hyuk was scanning the walls with his medical equipment. The incomplete life forms I detected earlier, I can trace their locations. They are being held in containment cells throughout the station. Security forces were pouring into the chamber now. Not just drones, but living alien soldiers wearing combat armor. Minji realized they needed weapons and cover. She grabbed a piece of debris from one of the crash drones and threw it at a wall panel. The panel exploded in sparks, revealing conduits and cables behind it. Park Dongwoo, she yelled. Can you turn their own systems against them? Working on it, he replied while connecting his device to the exposed conduits. Their security protocols are incredibly rigid. They cannot adapt to unexpected inputs. More energy blasts filled the air. The team took cover behind the alien council table. Veltheri and the other leaders had retreated to a protected area, but continued shouting orders. Begin neural extraction immediately, Noxandra commanded. Use emergency protocols if necessary. Kim Yuna looked up from her equipment with alarm. They are activating some kind of psychic weapon, a device that can forcibly extract memories and cognitive patterns from a distance. Minji felt a strange pressure building in her head, like something trying to push its way into her thoughts. The alien technology was attempting to invade her mind directly. But instead of fighting the intrusion, she did something unexpected. She opened her mind completely and let the aliens see everything. Not just her surface thoughts, but the deep core of what made her human. Her fierce love for her people, her absolute refusal to surrender, her willingness to die fighting rather than live as a slave, her unshakable belief that freedom was worth any price. The psychic pressure suddenly reversed. Instead of the aliens reading her mind, she was broadcasting her thoughts directly into their systems. Human emotions and ideas flooded through their carefully ordered networks. Chaos erupted throughout the station. Computer systems that had never encountered human-style thinking began malfunctioning. Security drones turned on each other. Environmental controls went haywire. What is she doing? Veltheri roared. She is infecting our networks with chaotic thought patterns, Germalic replied in panic. Human consciousness is spreading through our systems like a virus. Kim Yuna laughed as she watched her screens. Their whole network is built on the assumption that all thinking follows logical patterns, but human thoughts jump around in ways their computers cannot process. Park Dongwoo's device was now connected to multiple alien systems. I have access to the station's core functions: life support, artificial gravity, containment fields. Release the prisoners, Minji ordered. Every species they have captured. Let them all loose at once. Choi Jin-hyuk was monitoring the bio readings. Containment fields are dropping throughout the station. I am reading massive increases in neural activity. The suppressed consciousness patterns are reasserting themselves. Suddenly the chamber filled with new sounds, alarms, explosions, and something else. Voices calling out in dozens of alien languages. The prisoners were waking up, and they were angry. The three alien leaders looked at each other in growing panic. Their perfect orderly system was collapsing into chaos, and at the center of it all stood one human who refused to follow their rules. This is impossible. Noxandra clicked frantically. No single individual should be able to disrupt an entire station. Minji smiled grimly as explosions echoed through the corridors around them. You are right. One human could not do this alone. But I am not alone. I never was. Explosions rocked the station as liberated prisoners fought their way through corridors that had held them captive for years. Minji could hear the sounds of battle growing closer, but she was not thinking about escape anymore. She was thinking about something much more dangerous. Kim Yuna. She called out over the noise. Can you access the communication arrays that connect this station to the alien homeworlds? Maybe. Why? Because I want to give our three hosts exactly what they have been asking for, a demonstration of human unpredictability. Park Dong-woo looked up from the alien systems he was sabotaging. What are you planning? Something that will either save the galaxy or destroy it completely, Minji replied. I need you to override the station's broadcast systems. Maximum power, wide-spectrum transmission. The three alien leaders were huddled behind emergency barriers, shouting orders that no one was following anymore. Their security forces were scattered throughout the station fighting freed prisoners. Their computer networks were crashing under the weight of human thought patterns. Veltheri noticed what the humans were doing. Stop them. They cannot be allowed to access our communication systems. But it was too late. Kim Yuna had broken through the final security layers. I have control of the main transmitter array, ready to broadcast on all frequencies. Do it, Minji ordered. What happened next was something the galaxy had never seen before. Every communication device in 3 different star empires suddenly received the same transmission. Not words or images, but pure human consciousness. The raw experience of being human broadcast directly into alien minds. The effect was immediate and devastating. On Keth military ships, rigid hierarchies began breaking down as soldiers started thinking for themselves instead of just following orders. Commanders who had never questioned anything in their lives suddenly began asking why they were fighting wars they did not understand. In hive colonies, millions of drones experienced individual thought for the first time. The collective consciousness that had bound them together for millennia began fragmenting as each mind discovered its own unique perspective. Throughout resonant space energy, beings who had existed in perfect harmony for eons found themselves experiencing chaos and disorder. Their mathematical certainties crumbled as they encountered problems with no clear solutions. "What have you done?" Noxandra screamed. "You have infected our entire civilization with your chaotic thinking." "I have given them what you tried to steal from us," Minji replied. "The ability to think for themselves." Germalic's energy form was flickering wildly. "You do not understand the consequences. Our societies cannot function with individual consciousness. There will be chaos, revolution, war. Maybe," Minji admitted, "or maybe your people will learn that freedom is worth fighting for." The communication arrays were overloading from the massive power output. Sparks flew from control panels throughout the chamber. But the damage was already done. Three galactic civilizations were experiencing the human concept of free will for the first time. Veltheri pulled out a weapon that looked like crystallized lightning. You have doomed billions of beings to madness and conflict. I will not let you escape to witness the destruction you have caused. You still do not understand, Minji said as she faced the weapon without flinching. This was never about escape. This was about making sure that no matter what happens to us, your harvesting operation stops here. Park Dongwoo had been working frantically while the others talked. The neural storage banks are completely corrupted now. Every stolen consciousness pattern has been infected with human thought patterns. Even if they tried to use them, the results would be unpredictable. Choi Jin-hyuk was monitoring communications from throughout the station. Reports coming in from the freed prisoners. They are taking control of key systems. Some are heading for the docking bays. Others are destroying the surgical equipment. Kim Yuna looked up from her screens with amazement. I am receiving transmissions from all three alien empires. Uprisings everywhere. Military units refusing orders. Hive colonies declaring independence. Resonance entities questioning their fundamental existence. The station shuddered as something massive exploded in the lower levels. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. The artificial gravity flickered on and off. The reactor core is destabilizing, Park Dongwoo reported. Too much damage to the control systems. We need to evacuate now, or we will all die when this place goes nuclear. But none of the aliens were moving. They sat or stood in shock, watching their perfect ordered universe collapse in real time. Reports kept flooding in from their homeworlds, chaos spreading like wildfire through civilizations that had never experienced a disorder. You have destroyed everything, Veltheri whispered. Thousands of years of progress. Peaceful cooperation between our species, stability across the galaxy. You call harvesting other species peaceful cooperation, Minji asked. You call slavery stability. It was order, Noxandra clicked desperately. Everyone knew their place. Everyone served the greater good. Whose greater good? Minji demanded. The good of the species you conquered and brainwashed, or just your own? Another explosion shook the station. This one was much closer. Through the damaged walls, they could see freed prisoners fighting their way toward the command center. Dozens of different species working together despite never having met before. Look at them, Minji said, pointing to the approaching crowd. You kept them as slaves for years or decades or centuries. But the moment they got their minds back, they chose to fight together instead of just escaping alone. They should be grateful. Germalik's voice was fading as his energy patterns destabilized. We preserved their consciousness. We gave their abilities purpose. You stole their freedom and called it a gift, Minji replied. But freedom is not something you can take or give. It is something every thinking being deserves simply by existing. The chamber doors burst open. Liberated prisoners poured inside, led by beings from species Minji had never seen before. They looked around at the alien leaders who had imprisoned them, and their expressions were not forgiving. The station is lost, one of the prisoners announced. Core breach in 15 minutes. All functional ships are being prepared for evacuation. Minji looked at her team. Time to go. But as they headed for the exit, she turned back to the three alien leaders. Your empires are changing whether you like it or not. You can try to fight it and watch everything burn. Or you can learn to live with free people instead of slaves. And if we choose to fight, Veltheri asked. Minji smiled grimly. Then you will discover what humans are really capable of when we stop playing by your rules completely. The evacuation from the dying station should have been simple. Get to the ships and escape before the reactor exploded. But Minji had one more card to play, and it was the most dangerous one yet. As her team reached the docking bay, she stopped at a control terminal. Park Dongwoo, I need you to delay the reactor explosion. Give me 30 more minutes. Are you insane? He replied while checking the readings. This place is coming apart. We need to leave now. Not yet. The three empires are in chaos, but their leaders will try to restore order. They will blame us for everything and unite against humanity. unless we make sure they stay too busy fighting each other. Kim Yuna was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. She is right. Already seen reports of loyalist forces trying to crush the uprisings. If the old regimes survive, they will come after Earth with everything they have. Minji turned to the crowd of freed prisoners gathered in the docking bay. How many of you want revenge against the 3 species that enslaved you? The response was immediate and loud. Dozens of voices in different languages, all saying the same thing. They wanted justice for years or centuries of imprisonment. Then help me give you the perfect opportunity, Minji said. I am going to turn the Tri-Alliance against itself, but I need ships and crews willing to take some risks. A tall, blue-skinned alien stepped forward. I am Captain Zenth of the Fourthen Republic. My people were harvested 50 years ago. What do you have in mind, human? Minji smiled. How would you like to command a Keth Empire battleship? 20 minutes later, 3 small fleets launched from the exploding station. Each fleet was made up of freed prisoners flying captured alien vessels. But these were not random raids. Minji had planned each attack carefully to create maximum chaos. The first fleet attacked Keth military installations while broadcasting Hive collective identification codes. The second fleet hit Hive colonies while pretending to be resonance forces. The third fleet struck resonance energy nodes using captured Keth weapons. Each attack was designed to look like the other empires were taking advantage of the rebellions to settle old scores. And because the 3 species have been enemies for thousands of years, they were ready to believe the worst about each other. Kim Yuna. Minji called from her position on the bridge of a stolen Keth cruiser. Are you picking up the response chatter? Oh yes, Kim Yuna replied with satisfaction. Keth High Command is convinced the Hive is launching a coordinated assault. Hive Central Mind thinks the Resonance is trying to absorb their colonies. The Resonance Council believes both other species are attempting to eliminate them. Park Dongwu was coordinating the technical aspects of the deception. I am feeding false sensor data into their communication networks. Every time they try to verify what is happening, they get information that confirms their worst suspicions. The beauty of the plan was that it used the aliens' own rigid thinking against them. The Keth could only imagine military solutions to military problems. The Hive could only think in terms of collective threats requiring collective responses. The Resonance could only process attacks as attempts to disrupt their perfect order. None of them considered that they might be fighting shadows created by their former prisoners. Keth Third Fleet is moving to attack Hive Border Colony 7. Kim Yuna reported. Hive Defense Swarm is launching counterstrike against Keth Fortress Station. Resonance energy weapons are charging to fire on both fleets. Within hours, the 3 empires were at war with each other on dozens of fronts. Their rebellious populations were forgotten as military resources were redirected to fight external enemies. The carefully maintained balance of power that had allowed the Tri-Alliance to dominate the galaxy for millennia began collapsing. Choi Jin-hyuk was monitoring the casualties from his medical station. The fighting is spreading faster than anyone expected. Civilian populations are being evacuated from border worlds. This is turning into a real war. Minji felt a moment of doubt. She had wanted to prevent the 3 empires from uniting against humanity, but this level of destruction was more than she had intended. Billions of innocent beings were being caught in the crossfire. But then reports started coming in that changed everything. Revolution on Keth Prime. Kim Yuna announced. Military units are refusing to fight while their homeworld is in chaos. Similar reports from major Hive worlds and resonance nodes. The populations that experienced human consciousness are not just fighting for independence, Park Dongwu added. They are demanding an end to all the wars, both the civil wars and the conflicts between species. Captain Zenth contacted them from his captured battleship. Human Minji, you should see this. We are receiving surrender offers from isolated military units. They say they are tired of fighting and want to negotiate peace. Peace between who? Minji asked. Everyone. Keth soldiers surrendering to Hive colonies. Hive drones offering to help resonance entities repair damaged infrastructure. Beings who have been enemies for thousands of years suddenly working together. Minji realized what was happening. The human consciousness she had broadcast was not just giving aliens the ability to think for themselves. It was also giving them human concepts of cooperation and empathy. The war is ending almost as fast as it started, Kim Yuna reported with amazement. Local truces being declared everywhere. Joint relief efforts for damaged colonies. Former enemies sharing resources to help rebuild. "This is impossible," came a transmission from the dying Nexus station. It was Velthuri's voice, though he sounded weak and defeated. "Wars do not end like this. Species do not simply choose to stop fighting. Human species do," Minji replied. "And now your people are learning how." The three alien leaders were still on the station when it exploded. They had refused evacuation offers from their own people and chosen to die with their failed empire. Their last act was to broadcast a warning to any remaining loyalists about the dangerous human influence spreading through their civilizations. But it was too late. The transformation had already begun, and it could not be stopped. Across three galactic empires, beings who had never experienced freedom were learning to make their own choices, and most of them were choosing peace over war, cooperation over domination, and hope over fear. The great irony was that the aliens had been right about human unpredictability being dangerous. They just had not understood what kind of danger it really represented. It was not the danger of destruction. It was the danger of change. The kind of change that could not be controlled or contained or harvested for someone else's benefit. It was the danger of freedom itself. 6 months after the destruction of the Nexus station, Minji stood in the same conference room where this all began. But everything had changed. The reports on her desk were no longer about grain shipments and tax disputes. They were about something much more extraordinary. Peace treaties between species that had been enemies for millennia. Trade agreements that benefited everyone instead of just the powerful. Requests for help from civilizations learning to govern themselves democratically for the first time. Park Dongwoo entered the room carrying a data pad filled with technical specifications. The Vorthan Republic wants to share their antigrav technology with human colonies. In exchange, they want our agricultural techniques to help feed their growing population. Kim Yuna was at her communication station processing dozens of messages from across the galaxy. The former hive worlds are asking for advice on individual property rights. Apparently, when everyone started thinking for themselves, they also started wanting their own personal belongings. Choi Jin-hyuk looked up from medical reports he was reviewing. Birth rates are up dramatically in all three former empires. When beings stopped being slaves, they also started having families again. Population growth is exploding everywhere. Minji smiled as she read through the latest diplomatic correspondence. It was still hard work, but it was the kind of work that mattered. Instead of managing conflicts, she was helping build a better galaxy. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. Minji accepted it and found herself face to face with Captain Zenth. The tall, blue-skinned alien who had helped her turn the empires against each other was now serving as the elected president of a coalition of former slave species. "Human Minji," he said with obvious respect. "I have news that will interest you. We have found more Nexus stations." Minji felt a chill. "How many more?" 17 that we know of so far. All abandoned, but with full neural storage banks. Millions of stolen consciousness patterns from species we thought were extinct. Can they be restored? "We believe so. Your engineer Park Dongwoo sent us the specifications for the consciousness restoration process. We have already successfully revived 3 complete species. They are confused and frightened, but alive and free." Park Dongwoo looked pleased. "I based the restoration technology on human brain patterns. Turns out our chaotic thinking processes are exactly what is needed to repair damaged alien consciousness." Another transmission came through. This one was from a group Minji had never expected to hear from again. Former Keth military officers who had abandoned their empire to form something they called the New Republic. "Commander Minji," their spokesman said, "we formally request that Earth consider joining our alliance. not as subjects or junior partners, but as equals. We need human advisors to help us build a government that serves all citizens instead of just the strong. Before Minji could respond, another call came in. This one from former hive colonies that had united into something called the Individual Collective. It sounded like a contradiction, but somehow they were making it work. "We offer Earth full membership in our trade federation," their representative announced. "Human concepts of individual initiative combined with cooperative effort have revolutionized our economy. We want to learn more." A third transmission followed immediately. Former resonance entities who now called themselves the Harmony of Voices were requesting human mediators to help settle disputes between different energy patterns that had developed conflicting philosophies. Minji looked at the growing list of requests and invitations. Every species that had gained freedom was asking for human help, not because humans were superior, but because human thinking seemed to solve problems that rigid logic could not handle. But there was one more transmission waiting. This one made Minji pause. The message was from Earth itself, from the very officials who had originally sent her on this diplomatic mission. Their faces appeared on screen looking both amazed and slightly overwhelmed. "Commander Minji," the lead official began, "in light of recent galactic developments, we are prepared to offer you any position you want in the new diplomatic corps. Name your terms." Minji considered the offer. She could become an ambassador to any of the emerging free civilizations. She could help write the treaties that would govern peaceful relations between hundreds of species. She could have power and influence beyond anything she had ever imagined. But then she thought about what had brought her to this moment. The attempt to test her under pressure. The assumption that humans needed to prove their worth to survive. "I appreciate the offer," she replied. "But I think I will stay right here doing exactly what I was doing before. Reading reports, settling disputes, handling whatever problems come up." "But these are small matters," the official protested. "Routine diplomatic work. You could be shaping the future of the galaxy." Minji laughed. "I never stopped doing that. You just thought I was handling pop quizzes when I was actually dealing with real pressure." She gestured to the data flowing across her screens. Dozens of civilizations learning to be free. Millions of beings getting their minds and lives back. Former enemies working together to build something better. Every trade dispute I settle teaches aliens about fair negotiation. Every resource allocation I help with shows them cooperative problem solving. Every small decision I make creates ripples that spread across the galaxy. The transmission from Earth ended with the officials looking confused but impressed. They clearly still did not understand that the biggest changes often came from the smallest actions. Kim Yuna looked up from her communication station. New message coming in. "A species called the Metharian Confederacy wants to establish diplomatic relations. They heard about human problem-solving methods and want to learn our techniques." "Put them through," Minji said, settling back into her chair. Another day. Another species learning that freedom was possible. Another chance to prove that humans did not need to conquer the galaxy to change it. They just needed to be themselves. As Minji began her next routine diplomatic conversation with beings who had never imagined that solutions could come from chaos, she smiled. She had never wanted to be a galactic hero. She had just wanted to do her job. It turned out that sometimes those were the same thing. The galaxy was learning that humans did not do pop quizzes. They handled real pressure. And they did it by turning problems into opportunities and enemies into friends. One boring diplomatic report at a time.